What's up, plant junkies? My name is Jody from plantjunkiecreations.com, and today is all about the Silverlady Scindapsus, the caretake, and how I propagate these plants. I would consider this plant an easy plant to take care of. It doesn't require much care at all. The lighting that it will tolerate is low to bright and direct. And for my Scindapsus Silverlady here, I provide bright and direct light. The lower light you provide this plant, the slower it's going to grow. But I've noticed by providing bright and direct light, it reaches out and puts off a bunch of new green points. The watering of this plant all just depends on the pot size and the type of pot you're using. So typically I like to use terracotta because it speaks to you. You have what has just been watered that is very dark in color opposed to something very light in color and very light to the touch. So a simple rule of thumb with your plants is you typically water them weekly in the growing season. When it's not the growing season, I would water every like 10 to 14 days, typically. But with Scindapsus and plants in general, like they want to thrive. So tend to underwater opposed to overwatering. And I have a great example of like a thirsty plant versus a very just not thirsty plant. So here is a not thirsty plant. Her leaves are perky, they're standing up, they're firm to the touch, they just look vibrant. And then in this same pot that I have, you have a leaf that is curled. So these ones are okay, but this one is curled and she's wrinkled and very soft to the touch and she's drooping. Those are all signs that she's thirsty. And here's another one. Again, the terracotta is light opposed to being wet, very wet, just watered, and then light. And she's light to the touch, and then her leaves, she's trying to stand up tall, but they're curled. You see how they're curled? And they're very bendy, and if you look closely, if you starve your plant long enough, you'll start to see, it's easier to see on the underside, kind of like a wrinkled look, and that's a telltale sign to water. Here's another one. Droopy. She's thirsty. This isn't a Silverlady. This is my Silver Ann, and I pulled this out because I wanted to show you an example of a plant that's saying she's thirsty and ready to be watered. So you see how the leaves right there, you see how it's curled down, it's curled. You see over here how it's drooping down and the leaves are curled. Typically, she doesn't sit like that. She sits upright and is very perky, trying to reach for the light. For the soil composition, you basically can use any indoor gardening mix. Just add a little perlite to help with the drainage. You don't want it suffocating. That'll lead to root rot, which will lead to the death of your plant. But for all my plants, I just like to develop my own soil composition, which consists of cocoa coir, coconut husk, perlite, seed starter, peat moss, and a lot of perlite, and then charcoal. That helps with the drainage and also kind of keeps it chunky, which helps with root development. As your plant ages in this pot, the soil composition starts breaking down and it loses its nutrients, and it needs us to supplement it with fertilizer. Summer and spring are a good time to begin fertilizing. When you start seeing new growth points, that's the telltale sign to start fertilizing every other watering. So twice a month. During the winter, you don't want to fertilize. Just hold back. My go-to fertilizers are, what you'll see in every video, is Gringo Rasta Rise Up. This works miracle. And I'll mix it with this that I'm fairly new to, Super Thrive. It has really good reviews and I just had to try it. This provides vitamins and helps absorb the nutrients it needs. And then I like to rotate just depending on the symptoms and signs of some of your plants. You'll get like yellowing, and with like larger plants, you want to provide iron. So I'll mix iron in that gallon and I'll mix it with CalMag. Or sometimes I'll mix CalMag with this product, fish and seaweed fertilizer. This stuff is also very, very good. When you're mixing this in a gallon, you want to use it all. You want to use it that day because this is very fishy and it's just not good to do. Are you guys ready to learn one of the fun aspects of gardening? I have a short video in my feed to the basics of propagation that you might find helpful before chopping and propping. What are some key elements you will need when propagating? Water, heat, light, humidity, and just depending on the route that you go, airflow. Before I get in depth with these propagations, let me show you the atmosphere provided for success. And once the roots have been established, you can remove from this point. There are many ways to propagate this plant, but today I'm going to show you how I chose to propagate these. Water, plastic with dirt, and terracotta with dirt. If you are in no rush and you want to enjoy watching the roots develop, water propagation is a great method. Here I have taken some cuts and placed in water with a root promoter called Gringo Rasta Rise Up. Not only is this a fertilizer, it helps promote root growth, so it's 2-in-1 for the buck. To help speed up the root development, you could do either or. You can place a heat mat underneath, or you can place this in an eastern facing window. But be careful, because depending on where you live, you can burn the leaves. And if that's the case, I would set it back from the window. When choosing this method, you'll want to change out the water on a weekly basis. And with this particular cup, these have been rooting for just about a month, and I've taken the cuts right below the node. So you'll see the root development right at the node. Node, took the cutting here, and the roots all developed right up. Another way to propagate, and the way that I prefer, is using the soil method. Here I have a clear tray with a well-draining mix. I also have my cuttings, a single leaf cut and a tip cutting. As you look at these, you've got your stem, you have your node and your leaf. On this tip cutting, you have your stem, you have your aerial root developing at the node, a leaf, and a new leaf coming. So there are two ways you can propagate in the soil. You'll want to use, you don't have to, but I choose to use my rooting hormone and dip the aerial root right there. You can also use the Gringo Rasta at the bottom and the top, which will help keep the bacteria at bay. And you can set that aerial root right onto the surface of the dirt. I use a pin to hold it up so it stabilizes it until the roots are strong enough to support it. So here I have the pin just right below the leaf. Wherever you want to put it, you can, just enough to support it. The other way to propagate as well is by putting your hormone onto the node and to the base of this tip cut, just like that. And then you just stick it all the way down into the dirt right where that node is at, those roots. Kind of lightly push the dirt to hold it up, and then you'll want to water. Here I have an example of the clear tray with a single leaf cutting rooting well over a month. Here I've got my pot and the method that I prefer to avoid having to transplant. But just for recorded purposes, I chose to use a small pot with a well-draining mix, the same two cuttings, and don't forget to put your rooting hormone onto your cuts. And you just dip it in, stick it in, all the way up to those roots. With this one, instead of pinning it onto the surface, I'm as well going to stick the bottom of that stem into the dirt. I'm going to use the pin to support it because it has no roots, just to help support it until the roots develop. I also have what people call a wet stick with some roots developing, and I'm just going to bury those roots lightly into the dirt, kind of push the dirt around it, and just kind of place it on top. So it looks something like that. You want to water. Give it a good drink in till the water drips out. And since this is in terracotta, while the roots are developing, it is important to keep it moist. After watering, you'll want to place your cuttings into a greenhouse, something similar to this. A Ziploc works just as well. It provides the humidity that the plants will need. If you use this method, you will need to provide some sort of airflow so it's not left stagnant. And what I'll do when I'm using a Ziploc bag is on a daily basis, I'll take time to open up the bag to provide some air into there. Or with the greenhouse in the other clip, I'll just open the little slit there and provide air, or just take the lid off. You'll want to place these greenhouses either in an east-facing window or in a contained area under some grow lights. Remember to hit the like button if you like the content of this video, and be sure to subscribe to my channel for more plant-related videos. Are you guys ready to learn one of the fun aspects of gardening?